session of Breaking into PM. And in today's session, we have with us Srinidy Ravichandran. Srinidy, welcome to this.
Hi, Suhas. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks so much for joining in. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting chat. Srinidy, and many of you all might be following her on Twitter already. Some of you all might be connected to her, following her journey into breaking into product at Microsoft, etc. So you've been hearing more about this. Today, we'll go deeper into this journey. It's a very, very interesting one. Srinidy comes with a chemical engineering background, was a product consultant with Freshworks, then moved into a program management role with Microsoft, and is now in the core product domain. Also, she's moved countries, right? She was in India in the product management space, and now she's currently based in Seattle with Microsoft. So we'll be going deeper into both these parts of it. And in case any of you all are looking at similar transitions, either moving into a program/product management role at top 5 company in the world. Also, if any of you all are looking to move from roles from here to the US, of course, I think Srinidy's moment is on the personal side, but I'm sure you'll be able to pick up lots and lots of tips from here. So getting started, Srinidy, would love to kick this off. I think I gave a brief introduction into your journey. I would love to go deeper into how you got started in product management and how's the journey been like so far.
Awesome. Thanks, Suhas. That was a very nice intro. So hi, everybody. And thanks once again, Folks, for having me today. I think my association with Folks goes way back, I think in 2018, 2019, where I think we jointly hosted, I was leading Women in Product back then, and Folks was also in Chennai. I think Alan and Abhay were leading it. So I think there was one joint session or some session where we co-sponsored each other. So that was fun. And seeing TPF go from there to here, it's been super exciting journey for all of you as well. So very nice to see the growth. Let me get started about me. So I graduated from chemical engineering degree from Shastra University in Tamil Nadu. In 2017, and then I joined a core company, but I didn't really like it, so I dropped off in 5 to 6 months. And then I had very good mentors and seniors from college who recommended that I join Freshworks. So way back when I joined at Freshworks, I really did not know what IT was. I really did not know anything. But I was just looking for one thing, right? So all my colleagues at Freshworks were having fun while working. They were computer science people. They were people who went with different bachelor's degree, but they learned to work having fun. So I was like, you know what? All I want to do is just have fun at work and not really be bogged down by, different industrial standards or uniform to work, which is my major problem back then. So when I joined in, I did not know anything about IT world or product consultant or product management, even to getting an entry into a product consultant role without a prior, experience posted some challenges. But then I was able to get through to the other side, right? So I had some loops of interviews and then I got in. So getting into Freshworks was a world of change for me. So it's not just about the company culture, right? It's also a lot to do with what is the IT world always about, right? Because in India, when you come from a very typical, middle class family, they tell you IT means TCS or a Wipro, which are very service based companies, right? And my perception of service based company was, you're better not going there. So I didn't even sit for TCS when campus hire or college hire came, right? So I was very confused about whether to join Freshworks or not, even before I joined in. But once I joined in, it was a world of change for me. I got to learn a lot about different streams, and verticals inside Freshworks. And so 2 years into Freshworks, I was like, okay, what's next? Okay, product consulting is good. It's great. I got the hang of it. I worked with different people, both in and outside of the company. Great experience. But do I want to continue on that, right? And that's when I came onto LinkedIn. I created a LinkedIn profile for myself. And I was like, if I'm going to continue in pre-sales, I wanted to know more about what people around the world are doing, right? Like, what are my future job prospects? Can I have a mentor online who could potentially tell me how to take pre-sales, my skills to the next level, etc. That's when I think product management as a topic or a role was like starting to trend in, where people were either searching to become product managers, or people were like, okay, what is product management all about, right? So I was one of them. I did not know what product management was all about, and I actually went into LinkedIn to understand what is the future do I have as a product consultant, right? So that was like the crossroads that I was in. And then I went onto LinkedIn, and I saw Padmini Janaki's post saying that, there is a woman in product even called design thinking. And this is happening, that was happening very close to my previous work at Freshworks. So I was like, why not hop in? And it was also a free event, right? So I was like, all the more reasons to go there. So I show up there. I see a lot of people from a very wide, very rich background. They were not like starters or newbies. People had like a very solid 10 to 12 years of career experience, and they're still coming there to figure out what product management was all about. So I was like extremely curious. I was like, wow, this sounds like super interesting. But getting into that event that day really changed my life, right? So from somebody who came in with somebody who's like extremely curious, that session on design thinking, I think it was conducted by Mrs. Raji. She was like an ex-engineering manager at PayPal. So I still remember the day very vividly, because the kind of people who were with me on the group discussions were good experienced design folks, product folks, etc. So sitting with them and brainstorming how to build a product for people with hearing losses, etc., was like really eye-opening for me. And that's when I decided that, okay, maybe product management as an next career would be very interesting, because I'm able to naturally see how so many people contribute to build a very meaningful product that has good impact. So I came back home and I was like, okay, I'm going to start and stalk everybody who's in product and try figure out how that happens, right? Parallelly, Women in Product as an organization also really motivated me to be at it. So I really like their cause. So I was like, I'm going to join Women in Product, lead some of the courses, or just make women product in Chennai a little more meaningful, so that people know about it, right? Because professional communities in a place like Chennai is still a little bit lagging behind compared to places like Bangalore or Mumbai. So I was like, let's take that up a notch. So I really had a good set of people there. We conducted like 5 to 6 events in 2019. All of it were offline. So if you were somebody who were just like following a product journey for the last 2 years, the product of offline meetup was really different back then, and I'm pretty sure some of you would have gotten that insight from Atoms and Bits as well. So I got to meet a lot of people. Some of them turned out to be very good friends, some really good mentors. We all occasionally talk, but when we talk, we still have that connect that, hey, you know what, that time we did all of these events, so it's great. So moving back, so I went on Stock People, etc., and then I eventually became a part of a WhatsApp group for Women in Product India. So my next stint at Microsoft came from this group. So this is a very personal journey for a lot of us. I mean, just at least for me. So might not be exactly replicable, but I just wanted to underline that networking effects is super strong, right? So I happened to join in that Women in Product group like way back in 2019, and then 2020 March or April, somebody posted on the group saying, hey, I'm looking for a program manager role at Microsoft. If any of you are interested, ping me. I went through the job description. None of it matched, right? Like starting from the work experience requirement to, majorly the work experience requirement. But I was like, you know what? The description sounds very similar to what I was doing in my Freshworks. Maybe the scale is different, but I really want to give it a shot. So I pinged this person on one-on-one chat to say, hey, the experience do not matter. Does not match to what I already have, but a part of what is described on the job description is what I'm already doing. So would you be willing to interview me? And this person said, this person went over my resume, went over my LinkedIn, and she said, yeah, why not? Sure. So that was during a peak of COVID, right? Like the world shut down and we're all just starting what remote work is. And then we were like, okay, let's get started. So I didn't want to tell anybody because I was like, first of all, I'm not really sure if this is true, and even if it's true, let me get to the other side to tell everybody. So, so 3 rounds finishes. So Microsoft usually have like 5 to 6 rounds of interviews. The 6th one could be like HR, or could be like 6 full run interviews, and then the seventh could be HR. Completely depends on the team. What I learned, okay, I'll come to that a little bit later, but definitely. So I pinged this person, and then because it's COVID, I got 6 rounds of interview in a span of like 1 to 2 weeks, right? Because looks like they were also heading for a hiring freeze, and they wanted to roll out an offer earlier than what they wanted. So I had like back to back round of interviews, and then they tell me that I got selected. So when I crossed like fourth or fifth round, I tell my folks that I am interviewing for Microsoft. They're like, "Are you sure this is Microsoft? Because it's COVID world. Anybody can con you offline or online. So just be really careful." I was like, "Okay, I know that. I've also been in the same mindset. But so if even if I don't get it, no surprise. But if I get it, it's going to be like huge surprise for all of us." So that is typically what how I joined Microsoft, and my journey so far has been. So yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting. Honestly, we'd love to go deep in depth, like you mentioned, on those 5, 6 rounds. But I loved one point that you mentioned is punching up, right? Where you mentioned that, hey, okay, maybe the job description doesn't really match exactly what I have right now, but why don't I give it a shot? I think many people get stuck there. So that's a very, very interesting point. And second one, like you mentioned, I think the definition of networking, right? Networking isn't so transactional. You met someone in 2019, you were also contributing, exploring, meeting people, and 2020 midway, some opportunity comes through, you grab it, right? I think that's exactly what it is all about. It isn't about, hey, I added 100 people on LinkedIn, right? It's not about that. It's about these relationships that you have been able to. So I think great points to kick this off. Digging deeper, I think, like you mentioned, how did the process of a program manager interview at Microsoft look like for you?
Got it. Okay, so like I said, it was like a good 5 to 6 rounds of interviews. So we usually have something called as informational in Microsoft, which I'm not sure if it's like a generalized practice in Microsoft, but at least in Microsoft Teams, this is a practice, right? Where the hiring manager meets with you and they tell you about what the job is all about. And then people can still say whether they're interested, not interested, they want to proceed with the interview or not. So information is all about the manager pitching what you would be doing in a day-to-day, pitching the different types of contribution that you would be bringing in, right? So when I first met with my manager for the previous role, I had a first informational session with them. That's a good place to assess each other without being very judgmental, right? Like I know that it's not a pressure of being interviewed, and the other person also can sort of look out for those skills that they're looking out for in a very soft way. So informational went well. So like I said, I was doing all of this at Freshworks at a very small scale, and I had to do all of that like 100x more at Microsoft. So what I had to learn was a lot to do with change management, a lot of persuasion skills, meeting with the CXOs, etc., which was something that I was able to learn very successfully in the job. But taking a step back at the interview, there were like 5 rounds. So I had one informational round discarding that. The first round was with one of the peers of my manager. Actually, 2 rounds were there like that, and then one with the skip level, who are usually in the rank of like GMs, like group engineering manager or group product manager, program manager, etc. And then you have one more round. So if you are through like the first 3-4 rounds, it means you're in a good direction. Usually that's what people say, because like it's a lot of time investment both from their end and our end as well. So usually if you are good till fourth round, it's a pretty strong case for you to make it till the end. The next round, and usually the final round, is with the CVP. CVP is like the corporate vice president, and they typically manage one whole product vertical or functions of a product. So my last round was with CVP, and once the last round happened, and then we had like a HR round for negotiation, and then they rolled out an offer for me.
Nice, very interesting. And if you can go a little deeper into each of these rounds, what were the questions like? How did you prep for this interview? In your case, was it were you already preparing for a bunch of interviews? And how does that process look like for you?
Okay, so in my case, so I was like I was doing a bunch of stuff with women in product that had everything to do with product, but personally, I didn't really upskill myself on anything to do with product, right? So I did have somebody internal at Freshworks refer me for a product role, and I did get into the interview round, right? But that's when I realized I've been doing everything from an event standpoint, from a static, product standpoint, finding speakers, ideating with them, and by then we also started the podcast, right, which is like a podcast with all the PMs and entrepreneurs. But my particular experience with interview, or what do I have to do to prepare for a role, is something that I never really put a lot of effort and thought on. And that's one thing that I really want to tell people who are aspiring to be a product manager. Networking is one side, being a part of a community is on the other side, but you have to really like sit down and have like start to build a product mindset, which is not something that comes easily. It's something that's going to take an effort, because it has to be something like a muscle memory for us to take it forward, right? Like to think from multiple angles simultaneously and then to come to a conclusion. So I actually bombed my interview at Freshworks. I didn't do it well at all. They gave me a written assignment, and it was morally very bad. Like it was personally very bad, because people usually say that doing an internal transfer within the same company is far easier than going out to look for a PM role firsthand. So I was really shocked. But I also know intrinsically that I didn't do any justice to get the job. So that's when it really hit. I was like, okay, I have serious intentions to become product manager, but I'm actually not doing anything that is, relevant to what a product manager management preparation person should be doing. So I went online. I actually spoke to my hiring manager at Freshworks, who actually was willing to interview me, but I bombed it even before it started. So she recommended a couple of books and places to get started with, and that's where I got in all the more serious. But I was also parallelly applying to a lot of places, right? FANG or Microsoft was not really the place that I was looking at. I was looking at startups that were at the level of Freshworks, like way back in 2018, 19, which means we were still smaller back, like they were still smaller back then. So I was like, okay, maybe Sprinkler, maybe some other Edureka, like where it would probably work for me. But I continued to bomb a series of 20 or 30 rounds of interviews, right? And then at one point I was like, is this really for me? Is it the interview that I'm not doing well, or do I really not have the mindset, right? So I had that intervention. I went back to some of my mentors. So I have one mentor called Vignesh Vijay Kumar, also known as Body. And Body has been my mentor ever since I joined Freshworks, or even before that. He was my senior from college, basically. And also Padmini Janaki, of course, and a couple of others. So I went back to all of them and I was like, hey, like, can you tell me what are my core characteristics? Like, what do I do as a person? Am I good at what I do? And like, I didn't directly ask them, will I be a good PM or not? Like to Padmini, I did, because that is the all-time low I was in my life. But to all the others, I was having very indirect questions to actually assess myself. So once I did that, I came back and said, okay, it's just the interview preparation that I need to focus on, and not really to do with the mindset. But I also wanted to say that a lot of job is something that a lot of skill about a particular job, which is defined on the product description, is something that you will learn on the job. So if you, once again, do not match 100% of a particular job description, please go ahead and apply for it. You are actually overqualified, but you wouldn't know unless you go through the process. So coming back, I started with cracking the PM interview. That's honestly like a Bible. Even today, like even for my second transition inside Microsoft, a lot of what they said in that book really came handy. The other book that people usually recommend, and that's just also something that I recommend, is Decode and Conquer. I have read through both the books, really good. And also, Lewis Lynn is very active on LinkedIn. If you message him saying that you got in because of his book, he'd really be appreciative of that. So these two books really help. And there is one, obviously product folks have like a lot of free resources. I also remember going through some of that to think product design questions, etc. The last one is Sachin Rekhi's like 100 resources to product management. Honestly, it's a lot to go through. I still have that like in my favorites, but I haven't really completed all the hundreds by myself. But that's the thing about all of the resources that I mentioned, right? You don't have to go from like start to end. Pick a piece and figure out if you can master that in a day, and then come back to some other piece some other day whenever you're fine. So that's typically what I did. And my loops in Microsoft for the first team consist of like product design question, product thinking question. There was a lot of relationship building and a change management side of things, because I have like obviously interact with the CXOs of the world. So there were questions on that. How would I go about it? And then just like, what's your favorite product? How do you go about it? Type of questions. So these were like the questions that they typically ask me. One particular question where I was like a little bit gutsy, and I don't know in the hindsight if I should have been, was when my GPM asked me, what is something that you not like in our product, right? And that's when I was like reading up about Teams, and I told her, hey, I read up about Teams. Like everybody seemed to have like a lot of negative review, and like what's happening, what's up, etc. And then she took a lot of time to explain me what is up, and what are we doing as a product. And these kind of conversations really motivated me to work for a product. And obviously today is like a multi-million user product, etc. But all of these questions, right? And again, one more thing that I want to tell here is interview is not really one way, and that is something I'm also learning, right? Like as much as the company is evaluating you, as much as they want you, you also as much as you want them, they also sort of want you. So the equation goes both ways. So if you're not really clear on a product description, or if you're not really clear on what you're going to do, you should definitely ask them. And this is something that I tell everybody who is like interviewing for any role in any capacity. You also should assess the manager, right? You also should ask them some questions that are that they set as culture for the company, and you should ask them why they stand by what they stand by. I also have a mentor at Microsoft. Who tells me that go ask your next manager what's their leadership style. That's a little one level higher, but eventually we should get there, right? Like we should sort of ask people, what's your style? Because I'm going to be working for you, under you, contributing in your team. Like, how do you manage people? Is it like too much micromanagement, or do you just give too much free space for people to operate in their own will? And depending on who you are as a person, that should really help you assess the joining team as well. So beyond brand, beyond the pay scale, your immediate manager is the one who's going to have a lot of impact on your career, be it long term or short term. So that's one place I really wanted to let people know that you should focus on that if you are at least like doing breaking into PM or breaking into any job for that matter.
Got it. No, thanks for walking us through that. I think that was fairly detailed. One interesting point you mentioned, now you've shifted internally within Microsoft from a program manager to a product manager role. How did that internal transition look like? And if you could, share your experience being a program manager versus a product manager, how does the day in the life of both the PMs look like?
For sure. So typically, what program managers do is structurally very different in a lot of organizations. But what I did as a program manager in my previous role was being a part of engineering product group itself. So the only difference, or the way how you call it industry wise, is we are like the outbound product managers, where we directly go talk to customers, get the information, and then pass it as a feedback to any of the feature crews at the building. So if feature crews are very vertical, we were sort of like the horizontal people who would like help these vertical people prioritize their features, etc. So that's typically what I was doing as a program manager there. Coming to my internal transfer, so I had to move to the US for personal reason, and like Suhas mentioned, and the personal reason being I got married to somebody who was working in the US. So I had multiple options to explore. One was like I could come here as a student, or I could just come here as their dependent, or I could try internal transfer within Microsoft. I was honestly giving shot to all three of them simultaneously, because for me, what worked the earliest was the earliest option available. So Microsoft culturally is a really good company, where they help you when you have a personal prioritization to be done, or they also just help you if you want to move jobs, and if you're very clear about what you want to do, right? Like it's more like it's a right of your manager to help you, even even if you say that, I'm done working in this team, I want to like move somewhere else. But I didn't do all of that. I really loved working for my previous team, but I really had like a very pressing personal reason because of which I need to move. So I approached my manager, I approached my GPM. I told them that this is my reason to move, and I'm okay to wait until I get like the right opportunity to move. It's not like I want to get this done tomorrow. And usually all of these internal processes, especially within the company, but across two geos, usually take a really long time. In my case, it took nearly like 6 months to getting a job and actually moving to the US. So another interesting thing is every job change that you do internally within Microsoft, be it in the same geo, across geo, from one discipline to another discipline, you have to go through the interview process just like anybody else who's applying outside. In that way, Microsoft is like extremely fair. So I had another round of four to five rounds of interviews. The only interview that I didn't have is the interview with my CVP. And I didn't have that because it's the same CVP who's managing both the organization. So I had like same informational with my manager, and then an interview with my engineering manager, who is my counterpart right now, and then group engineering manager, and then with the GPM of that particular discipline. And then HR was not really a thing because it was just internal. So we didn't have to like have a lot of back and forth conversation. But this is typically my interview loops internal as well. So nothing really changes except for the fact that I had like one less round. But apart from, and if you are moving completely, like I'm a part of this organization that's called E+D, which is basically like experience and devices. So Office, Teams, Outlook, all of that come under this. There's another function called C+AL, which is the Azure and everything, right? So people usually move from these two as well. So in that case, again, they go through the full loop and then they go through. So nothing really happens like, hey, I want to join your team. Okay, come join my team. It doesn't usually happen that way.
Yeah. Was the question similar, given that you were moving to another geography? Was the interview experience any different?
Interview experience slightly varied, but the overarching theme remained the same. It being like a product thinking, product design question. In my current role, I have a lot of lot of internal Microsoft folks, but are external to teams who I have to partner with on a day-to-day basis. So I did have some questions on like conflict resolution, managing people all up, etc. Because this job requires that. But yeah, that's. Like everything was same, like product design, product thinking question. And then in addition to what was not there and what's here is the conflict resolution, people management, etc.
Got it. So similar kind of resources like the ones you mentioned earlier, right?
Absolutely.
That process.
Absolutely. I went to the same cracking PM, read through all the highlighted lines once again, and then went for the interview.
Nice. No, thanks so much for sharing that. Last question for this section. Srinidy, what's your favorite thing about about product management, and what is one thing that you don't like about it? Maybe something that is an unpopular opinion from all the hype that's created on Twitter. But what's one thing that you really love about doing what you do, and what's one thing that you don't enjoy too much?
I think the one thing that I really like doing is what is something that inspired me to find a job in product is the collaboration that you have with people of different backgrounds, right? Like I get to talk to marketing, I get to talk to design, I get to talk to engineer on the same day, and no other role gives you that. Obviously, you can go talk to them over a cup of coffee or tea, etc. But collaborating with people who come from a very specific lens, and then they contribute to build a particular product. The discussion in itself is very enriching, and that's what I really like about being a PM, right? Like it's nothing to do with prioritization. It's nothing to do with like putting a task and managing that on Jira. We use ADO, which is like a Jira equivalent at Microsoft, but it's nothing of that sort. It's basically like I have an ability to walk over to somebody's desk and ask, why are we building this? What's a long-term goal for that, right? And then they think of something and you think, oh, I thought this, and that's a good discussion, which I really like. In the whole being a product manager. What I really don't like being a product manager is how much it's glorified, in the outside world. Because this is a lot of grind and hustle, right? Like, if something that launches good, great, nobody talks about it. But if everything goes wrong, it's the PM who's going to take the brand for it, right? So people think it's like a glorified job. Having a PM title is the be all end all, but it's actually not the case. It's like every day you end up feel like, some days you feel like your job is not rewarding enough, and rightfully so, right? You don't have to be rewarded for every feature that you ship, or every feature that you ship is not going to create a PR in the news channels, right? So it's a lot of day-to-day thing, a lot of discipline that's required to get into it. And you are definitely not the CEO of your product. You especially if you work in big techs, you have a larger vision, you have a larger project mission, you have an OKR, all of this tying to that one feature that you're going to build. So you definitely have to put a lot of blood and sweat in making that happen. And nobody is going to appreciate you because it came out well. And yeah, I mean, I'm not saying people haven't appreciated me in the past or people aren't appreciating me, but I'm just saying it's really glorified. Like, people think that every feature that I build is going to make a PR in the news tomorrow, and like with a catchy headlines, etc. That's usually not the case, and that's usually where people come and tell me, "Oh, but I really thought this is what product managers do," and I was like, "No, it's unfortunately not." And it's also fortunate that you shouldn't be looking out for a job just to build features that will make into like business PRs every day.
100% agree. Yeah, no, I think thanks for highlighting that, Srinidy. I think that is the gist, right? In a gist, I think that is super true. Yeah, I think this was a fantastic chat, Srinidy. Thanks for being so candid. Really enjoyed learning more about the Microsoft process, how your journey's been, and wishing you the very best. I think it's a new geography, new friends, probably a slightly new environment for you. So all the best for whatever's coming through, and we'd love to stay tuned and keep posted on how your journey goes through.
Absolutely. Thank you, Suhas, for having me. And it was, this is I mean, life came a full circle for me, honestly. Like, from doing events with TPF to all the way doing interviews with TPF, and also personally, like, interviewing people for the broadcast to all the way being interviewed. This was so much fun. And thank you so much for having me today.
Same. Thanks so much, Srinidy.
Thanks. Bye.